Let's go back to Friday, November 17th, 1978. The burger chef on Crawfordsville Road was closing for the night. 4 employees stayed late. Jane Fritt, 20 years old, the assistant manager. Ruth Shelton, 18, a recent high school graduate. Daniel Davis, 16, who was still in high school. Mark Flemons, also 16, who was working the night shift for some extra money. When the store manager arrived the next morning, the scene was strange. The restaurant was unlocked, the safe was open, and those 4 employees were gone. At first, police didn't panic. They assumed maybe it was an inside job. Maybe the kids had taken the money from the safe, around $500, and gone out for the night. A missing persons report wasn't immediately treated with urgency, but by Sunday, reality came crashing in. In a wooded area about 20 miles away, all 4 bodies were found. The details were brutal. Jane and Ruth were shot, Daniel stabbed, Mark beaten, possibly while trying to run. The crime stunned the community. 4 young people killed for what looked like a petty robbery. $500. That was it. But just as shocking as the crime itself was what happened next, the investigation. The crime scene at the Burger Chef wasn't properly secured. Police didn't treat it like a homicide until it was too late. Evidence was lost. Witnesses who had seen suspicious men hanging around the restaurant weren't interviewed until much later, and as weeks turned into months, leads dried up. There were theories, of course. Some suspected it was a robbery gone wrong. Others whispered about drug debts, gang involvement, or even a targeted hit. A knife was found, but it didn't lead anywhere. Witness sketches were drawn, but to this day, no one has ever been charged. And this is where the moral dilemma begins. What happens when justice is denied? For the families, the pain is obvious. 4 young lives ended brutally, and more than 4 decades later, there are still no answers. For investigators, the case is a constant reminder of missteps. If crucial evidence is lost in the early hours, can justice ever be served? And when it seems impossible, what is the moral path forward? And for society as a whole, there's the haunting reality that someone, or several someones, got away with murder. This leads us into tough questions. First, how much responsibility do police have to keep cold cases alive? On one hand, every human life deserves justice. On the other hand, police departments have limited resources. They must decide whether to spend time on old unsolved murders or on fresh cases where evidence is stronger. Is it moral to prioritize new victims over old ones? Second, what about suspects? Over the years, some people have been named as likely perpetrators, but the evidence was never strong enough for charges. So here's another moral dilemma. Is it more ethical to let a likely killer live out his life unpunished rather than risk destroying an innocent one? And third, what about us, the public? Why do we keep telling and retelling these stories? Are we honoring the victims or exploiting their pain for intrigue? When does remembering become sensationalizing? The Burger Chef murders force us to stare directly at these questions. It's not just a story about a crime, it's a story about how we, as humans, wrestle with justice. Think about the families. For them, each anniversary is a reminder that justice has not arrived. Now think about the investigators. Some of them have spoken in later years about regret. They know mistakes were made. They know evidence slipped through their fingers. Imagine carrying that guilt, knowing that one decision in the first 48 hours could have changed everything. And then there's us. Decades later, we inherit the silence, the gaps, the unhealed wound of a community. The question lingers, is justice about punishment, or is it about truth? And what do we do when we get neither? Is it better to keep chasing answers, no matter how cold the trail? Or is it more moral to accept silence, knowing that sometimes truth is out of reach? And here's an even harder question. If you had the choice, would you rather risk punishing an innocent person for the sake of closure, or would you leave the case open forever with no justice at all? The Burger Chef murders are more than a mystery. They're a mirror, reflecting back the hardest truth about justice, that sometimes it never comes. If this story made you think, subscribe to explore more unsolved mysteries and moral dilemmas.